last week, but we actually got a special request for this week's painting. So we'll put away our Northern Lights and get our new canvas ready for our deer painting today. So Wayne, I hope you enjoy. Thank you for the suggestion. All right, we just want to make sure our canvas is nice and secure. And I'm actually reusing an old canvas today, which had a painting that I didn't really care for, and I went ahead and prepped our background to save us a little time. So in order to achieve this kind of textured green that I did, in case you'd like to give it a try at home, I just poured some white paint and a little bit of green paint, and I used a paper towel to make a circular motion and spread it throughout the canvas and cover up the old painting. And then I went back in with a brush to add a little bit of black here and there and give it some depth. So when you look at it up close, you can see those different colors. But at the same time, it's not too busy, so it won't distract from our lovely deer that we're going to create today. So I'm going to start with a small brush, and we're going to really focus on getting the right outline, the right shape for our painting. And drawing with paint can seem a little intimidating. It's not as easy to erase as pencil, but if you have a blank page or canvas, please feel free to use pencil or charcoal. But I'm going to use a light brown, since that's going to be our primary color, and create my outline. So I'm going to start with the antlers, since those take up the most space. We're going to create a buck today, a buck deer. And since I want to make sure it fits on my canvas, we'll start there. So we'll start nice and high with the top of the antler, and it's going to create, need a little more paint, a bit of a U shape coming down. So you want to think about to the center of your canvas where the top of the head is going to start. So that way you're making sure your space is going to fit everything. So this is going to be the outside of the antler, and then it'll come into the head. So that little line here up and over is the top of the head between the two antlers. And we'll get another shape up so that they're relatively even. There's a lot of symmetry that happens. Okay. And it's okay if our lines aren't as sharp and crisp as maybe we want them for the finished product. This is really just to get the outline and the look of the deer. So now that we have the two antlers, we can go ahead and add a little bit more of the shape to them, because, right, they're not just straight lines, they have these little shapes. All right, coming down. And you want them to be kind of different sizes. They're all sort of pointing in towards each other, so keep that in mind. All right. And we'll go to the other side. And all these lines I'm painting are very curved. They're all curving. And then maybe one here. Come up. There we go. So I think that looks pretty good to start us off. We might edit and change these a little bit. Like this one's a little wider than the other, so we can always fix as we go and as we're adding on. But let's go ahead and get the shape of the face of the deer. So again, just getting some more of the same light brown color on my brush. This is going to come out to his two little ears sticking out the side. So it'll curve down and then just a little wavy shape out and a nice curve to come back in. Similar on the other side. Wavy going out, points up a little bit. And curve to come back in. Now, the trickiest part is the shape of the face coming down to the nose. So this may take a couple tries if you're trying it at home. Again, you want both sides to kind of match up. So the face, it goes out a little bit first. Think of like your cheekbones on your own face. Comes out and then in towards the jaw. But nice and long towards the bottom. We'll curve it here where the nose is going to eventually go. And I'm going to start back up at the top and bring it down to match where it is on the bottom. So it's going to curve out for the little cheekbone. Try to get it to match up on where it's coming out and in. And down. We'll add another small, like a smile on the bottom, because that's where his mouth is, to differentiate the nose from the mouth. And his nose, it almost looks a little bit like a heart or a bean. Nice and big there. And we'll have some different colors of fur around it when we get there to add more detail. So finally, we just want to add a little bit of the deer's body, so that way the head isn't just floating there. So our deer's kind of looking at us from the side, so the body's going to come from this angle. And it's going to start on the side a little bit lower down. It'll come straight. All right. And that gives us our rough outline. So we'll edit this as we're going, adding different colors to make it look like a real animal, hopefully. So I'm going to switch over to a slightly larger brush now that my outline's in place, and go ahead and just fill in the bulk of what I created and try to keep some of my lines intact so I remember where everything goes. The only part I'm not going to fill is this area around the nose, because I'm going to be painting that white. So I don't want to fill it with brown paint and then have that mixing with the white. But everything else we can go ahead and fill in with a larger brush. I might even use a larger one than this. Let's see. But of course, if you're concerned about going outside your lines, use something a little bit smaller. And hopefully I have enough brown paint, but we can always mix more. And I'm using a light shade of brown, so that way it's easier if I want to add highlights or shadows to build up on top of it. If you start with something that's very dark, you might have difficulty adding the highlights, or vice versa. If you start very light, it's going to take some time for you to work up to get to those dark colors for your shadows. So we're leaving just this area around the mouth and the nose, but we'll get the rest. It's also good to pay attention to your brush strokes. So I'm kind of pulling the paintbrush towards me so that when you look at the strokes, it's like the fur is flowing down the body. And as we work on the face and add more detail, you'll see I'll change up the direction of my strokes a little bit more. Add a little more water to help make sure the green isn't poking through too much. It's all right if there's a little bit here and there, but you really want to cover it up. Again, pay attention to the direction of those brush strokes. All right. I'm almost out of my light brown, so I'm just gonna mix a little bit more real quick. I use a combination of primarily red, green, and yellow for my browns. Oh, that's a little bit lighter, but that's okay. It'll help me distinguish the face from the body. Oh, our music got awfully soft. I'm going to go ahead and turn it up. I believe it was Mozart on the playlist today, for anybody who was wondering. All right. I know not too long ago, Fellowship had some cute baby deer, some fawns on the property. And lately with the quarantine, there's been videos circulating of the deer in areas making their way to the beach. And they've been having fun playing in the ocean without any big crowds there. So that's always nice to see. So we're getting there. We almost got the whole thing filled in. A little more water. Remember, whenever your paint isn't spreading as smoothly as you'd like, just add a little more water to your brush. It's also partially, again, because I'm reusing a canvas, so there's already a texture to it. So sometimes you got to cover up that texture with a little extra paint. All right. So there we go. We've got the outline of our deer. I'm going to go back in with that medium-sized brush I had and use my white paint to fill in the parts that I left open. And then we'll move on to adding some detail. So we'll do white here. And I'm going to go around the nose, kind of bringing my brush strokes in and around it to give it that round shape. And be careful of blending on the edges where my brown paint is. I want it to blend a little bit, nice and softly, but still keep my colors a little separate at the same time. Add a little down here around the mouth as well. Okay, now for some black paint for our nose, and we'll also go ahead and mark in where the eyes are going to go. Right? That's one important facial feature we haven't added yet. So we'll add our black paint. Again, we just want to be extra careful that we're not getting too much of our black mixed in with the white that's around it so that it all turns gray. We want to keep them a little separate. And while my paint is still wet around the mouth, I'm going to make sure I have just the tiniest bit of black paint still on my brush and follow the line between the nose and the mouth to add a little bit. And I'll rinse my brush so it's just clear water on it, that it's clean. Dry it off and gently go back over to soften it up. So again, you want to make sure your brush is nice and clean and just softly go. And I'll even pull my brush strokes down to show the rounding of the chin. So that just adds a little bit of shadow under the nose. All right. So again, going back with my black paint on the brush, let's go ahead and mark where the eyes go on the deer. So they're going to be pretty close to actually where the ears are, to the side of the face. And what I like to do is create just a bit of a rainbow shape, nice and small, and then a circle underneath. So that gives you the upper lid and then the eyeball. So we'll add some highlights to it, everything, to make it a little bit more defined later. So I'm going to do the same on the other side. Again, it's kind of right under where the ear is, basically on that cheekbone shape that we created earlier. Make our little rainbow of an eyelid. And then a circle underneath. Okay. So rinsing my brush, I want to add some definition to the face so it doesn't look so flat. So I'm going to use a darker shade of brown, so still in the same family of what I was using before. And I'm going to create the bridge of the nose as well as a little more detail in the ears and other parts of the ear. So the bridge, it's going to start almost like an eyebrow on the deer, up nice and high, and come down towards the nose. We're just going to mark that in, and I might do a couple little brush strokes out towards the edge of the face just to show the slant of the face. So we just need a little bit, and we'll do the opposite side, and starting up by an eyebrow, it's going to come down. A few little marks here and there. I'm going to use the same color to come on this side of the face, just this side, where the shadow is being cast. And just add a little bit. And if these lines ever feel too dark or too abrupt, clean your brush and go back in and soften it up. And just pay attention to what direction you're going in, again, to get the right curvature of the face. And all the way down. We're just blending a little bit. That edge. All right. So again, going back to that dark brown, we'll add some into the ears. So we're going to focus on starting at the point of the ears and then following the edges and blending in, leaving the center of the ear lighter than the edges. That'll give us the right color shade. So we'll do one side and then the other again, starting at the top, following the edge of the ear, and then just blend it in to the center where it gets lighter. And you can always kind of push and pull with your paint. If you do too much with the dark brown, add a little light brown. If you add too much of the light brown, go back to your dark brown. going to add some more dark brown into the antlers and even the body of the deer before we move on to our next color. So we're going to, again, stick with our shadows to one side. So our shadow on our antlers is going to be on this back side here. Adding it in right towards the root of the antler. Oh, YouTube music. It always wants to have a commercial. Sorry about that, folks. There we go. Back to some Mozart. All right, so we're going to do the same on this antler. Add some shadow to the underside. Even add pretty much like a brow bone. It's going to go a little wavy line on top too, nice and soft, but just to make sure we get all those characteristics in. We'll add some dark brown to the body. So the fur on the body is going to kind of come in almost like he's wearing a scarf, and then it'll loosen up as it gets further to the side. So, and you can get pretty heavy-handed with your brush strokes here because the fur is longer on the body, so it's okay if you see it to give it that texture. Just be careful when you're approaching the edge of the face we want to maintain that definition of the face. Just a couple kind of starting up and curving out. Okay, so it's coming along. Now we want to add some different colors to, again, add some depth. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, actually, and mix the tiny bit of my brown that I had. Not too much. I want it to keep more of a yellowish tint to it. To add a little bit, just blending into the body of the fur. A little here, a little there. You don't need too much. If it looks too bright, again, rinse your brush and soften it up. You can almost have it be pretty watery if you just want to glaze over the top coat of paint and add it. I'm going to add a tiny bit to the bridge of the nose too, here and there. And even in the ear a little bit. Okay. I might do the same with even a little bit of blue mixed in with my brown. It'll just give you different hues that are still going to blend in with the natural look of your painting. But we always want to add a little depth. So I think it's a little too dark. So, we're just going to go in the areas with this very lightly. Add it. Focus on close to the face where those shadows are. you don't think of using blue paint when you're painting a deer, but it can be helpful. All right. So again, with this blue mixed in to my brown, it's actually pretty close to black. I might add a tiny bit of black. I'm going to go back into the shadows of his antler. Add a little bit more to it. A little, his brow bone here on the top of the head. And a little bit into the ears as well. Just a little, not much. Take some time to build up these different shades. Painting. Just gotta rinse my brush a little more. That's the tricky part about painting something that appears all one color from a distance. Is finding those different colors that you want to mix and incorporate. Back over the yellows. I'm just going to put some back. Constantly changing your brush strokes to fit the curvature of the face. A lot of detail. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to a even smaller brush. That one's square, we want a round one. So nice and tiny for those little details. I'm going to add, I think, some white to my antlers, just up on the top here and there. Top of the points. And I'll go ahead and blend that in a little more in a moment. Let's add each one. With the white, you have to be extra careful blending so that you don't lose the brightness and have it just completely fall flat with your other colors. Okay. We're going to add a little white to around the eyes, just to soften those up a little. Clean brush going back in. I'm going to switch to a different brush actually for blending. My small one wasn't quite working the way I wanted it to. Add a little more brown. And a lot of quick little brush strokes, little lines all close together is going to give us that fur texture as well. So that's kind of the nice thing about animal fur is you don't have to be precise. All right, so I think we're getting pretty close to our finished deer. We'll add a couple little highlights to his eyes, right? Because the light, it always reflects off of those dark eyes. So with our tiny brush again, a little bit of white paint. Just little, about 2 little dots on each eye. And that should just about do it. Oh, actually, I almost forgot we didn't add some detail to his nostrils. So we'll take that black-blue kind of blend and add, we created the overall shape of the nose, but just the 2 nostrils as well. There it goes out. And maybe a highlight on the nose too. And this will be our final touch for our deer today. Just a little bit of white paint. Right on the top. Okay. So Wayne, thank you for the suggestion. You definitely made it a challenge for me, and I hope you enjoyed watching. We'll take a closer look at our deer painting, and I hope you enjoyed following along with me today, everyone. So let's see, we've got our antlers for a colorful fur. All right, have a wonderful afternoon.